We go out in the field. We've been all over this country in the last 2 years.
Standing Rock. I've been with you. I've been with you since Standing Rock.
Wow, you got me on right now. We're doing it, baby. We're going to South Bend. It's time you show the real Mayor Pete.
In 100 days, they tore down 1,000 houses in 100 days.
Thank you, whether it's Standing Rock or Flint or everything else you do. You know, you guys, it's not even like watching news. It's just watching truth, you know.
It's not me and you, Jordan. It's the ruling class. It's David Koch. It's the Walton family, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. It's them, not us, that benefit from these illegal offensive wars.
Come on over here. Whoa!
We're here at the Bellagio in Las Vegas, and you are going to see live the actual caucus process. We are here.
We go out in the field, and we give the microphone back to the people.
Yo! Coup! I know who you are, yo!
How you doing, man?
You're the man, yo!
Unmarked pills, okay.
Ooh, essential oils, purification. Oh, peppermint. La la la. Love it.
I am worried about Jordan, testing positive. He doesn't have any breathing difficulties right now, but he definitely has a cough that's been really bad and that's been hurting his chest.
That's Fury right there. I've cleared off the desk, and now got my drill a hole, and we'll see how this goes. Hopefully well. I know a general idea of what I want, essentially. So I'll try and get all this down to about a minute, get the main points, especially I got 2 videos at least for Flint.
The bottom line is, it's Sunday morning. I'm preparing for my Sunday live stream, which usually takes me about 2 hours to prepare for before the live stream. And I got an email from a viewer.
Hey guys, Jen Dice here with a behind the scenes video. First of all, thank you so much for being a member. It's because of you guys that Jamal and I are able to be here. We can't thank you enough. It means just the world to us.
Millions and millions of people have been laid off. Millions more have had their hours cut. We're kind of living in a quiet, silent depression. What do you call 45 million people filing for unemployment?
$1,200 in 3 months makes no sense. Makes absolutely no sense.
Everybody should be paying attention to what's going on because this is happening in every county, not just Louisville, Kentucky. And that's why the world is like, wait a minute, enough's enough.
And one thing I do know is if you're not sitting at the table, you are on the menu. And it seems like we continue to be on the menu.
I don't want to have to lose everything that we worked really hard for. We've been struggling for 5 years, and then we finally got everything together, and it just instantly went away.
Literally driving across the country during the pandemic, talking to people, finding out what's going on.
There are people such as yourself and other people that are telling the true story of what is happening.
All of these Black people have been assassinated by police in this city, and none of them have been brought to justice.
People don't really care about those things in places where, you know, we're not New York, we're not Chicago, we're not Minneapolis, we're Louisville, Kentucky.
If somebody calls you screaming for help in 911, they never treated her. They never came to her apartment, nothing.
Vote, and do what's right in your heart because change comes from within. So as long as your heart is pure and you're doing what's right, that's what matters.
Once upon a time, there was truth in journalism where brave men and women gave voice to the voiceless. But then the corporations bought the journalist, poisoning the news that we are fed. With those tainted sources, all we ever ate was a steady diet of status quo. This hijacked narrative is the truth of mass suffering, injustice, and corruption throughout our land. Status quo, status quo, status quo, status quo. To expose this shift to oligarchy came a band of honest journalists. They left the studio and hit the streets to give the microphone back to the people. From sea to sea, the people were empowered to share their truth. Their voices no longer stifled, reclaimed their power. Join the media revolution now.
Hey, it's Jordan Sheridan live. It is Wednesday, March 17th, 2021. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. I have put on my suit jacket because I wanted to look professional for somebody I admire. Seattle City Council member Kshama Sawant is with me today, who I think, honestly, maybe doesn't get enough coverage because she's out there in Seattle rather than nationally. But has actually demonstrated the best actual success for a leading elected progressive and proud socialist in the country. Council member, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jordan.
So I want to just first get right into what's going on in Seattle. We'll get into national in a few minutes, but I don't know if a lot of people realize that there's been efforts to recall you several times, actually. But Amazon at first tried to essentially defeat you at the ballot box, which they were unsuccessful. They poured in over $1 million to your campaign, against your campaign there the last go around. You still won. And since then, there's been efforts to remove you from office undemocratically, in my opinion. So I wanted to update the audience because obviously, even though it's in Seattle, it shows the powers that be and all the efforts and dirty tricks they will take to try and remove people that actually politically fight.
Yes, as you correctly said, Jordan, the recall attempt, which I'll talk about in a second, more about it, has everything to do with the fact that our office, our Socialist Council office, and the movements that we have helped spearhead are directly in the face of the interests of the big business, ruling class, billionaires. And they not only do not like the fact that we have the courage to fight and get organized and fight back. What they hate the most is that we have a strong track record of having won victories that were thought of as impossible. As you know, we won our first election in 2013, and then less than 6 months after I took office, we were able to win the $15 minimum wage. We made Seattle the first major city to win it, and the 15 Now movement that we launched here then went nationwide. And now, of course, it's a nationwide question for a federal $15 minimum wage. And at that time, we had an absolute onslaught from big business and the politicians that represent them. And these are all Democratic Party politicians in the city here. And yet we were able to win because we refused to have our council office be one of those go along, get along kind of office. And I think it is a real demonstration of why the left, the progressive movement, the labor movement, and working people we don't need just numbers of progressives being elected. All those numbers are going to come to naught unless we have people who are willing to build movements and fight for our rights, which is what we have done. Last year, we won the Amazon tax to fund affordable housing and Green New Deal jobs. And we have won a slew of renters' rights that have flown in the face of corporate landlords who are absolutely angry about all of this. So all of this, as you said, they have tried various means, including trying to defeat our re-elections, and yet we have won 3 elections so far. They have launched lawsuit after lawsuit, ethics complaint after ethics complaint against us. I mean, I have lost count. They even launched some ethics complaints because we use the City Hall printer and copier to produce leaflets and posters for our movement, which we do proudly. We don't apologize for that. But the point is that they have tried everything in their power, and now they have this recall effort with 4 charges, all of them false charges. And it's really part of the nationwide targeting of the Black Lives Matter movement itself, because 2 of those 4 charges are directly relating to my solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement.
And I think that a lot of people, because I've already seen the tweets and things like that when I point out your success, where people, naysayers, have said, well, yeah, let her come to Congress, see how effective she could be, because that's Seattle. That's not the real world in terms of what Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Ro Khanna, the progressives in the House, Bernie, there seems to be, at least from people that give them the benefit of the doubt, and to be clear, my point is to be constructive, not just to indiscriminately criticize. But it seems to me there seems to be this separation that people who defend the current progressive strategy nationally that says, well, what Council Member Sawant and your political allies there in Seattle have been able to do wouldn't be as simple or wouldn't be as easy or wouldn't be doable on the national level. And you and I were talking that kind of thinking, that there's somehow a difference between local fight, the local political fighting, and what you have to do nationally, it's not wise to think that way. Can you kind of explain what your thoughts are on that?
Yes, and starting with the point that you made, Jordan, which is very important to clarify, that these are not personalized questions. I actually don't doubt how genuine the squad members are and how Bernie Sanders, how genuine he has been. I mean, my organization, Socialist Alternative, and I have supported Bernie Sanders' both presidential campaigns. And it's really a question of what strategy can win. And I think it's very tempting for a lot of people to think that, well, we should not demand that the squad and Bernie Sanders use a fighting approach in Congress because that it doesn't work there. It can work. We are able to win $15 an hour much more easily in Seattle. But look, first of all, let me just say, we have a recall campaign against our office. So any idea that somehow big business and their spokespeople will let you fly under the radar and win historic victories locally and not bother you, no, that is just blown out of the water by the fact that our office has constantly been under attack. In other words, the point being that for big business, for the capitalist class, for the ruling elite, any example of working people getting organized, winning their own voice in the halls of power, and using that voice courageously to build organized resistance and win victories, any example of this is dangerous for the ruling class, because they know, as should we, that every example of success is contagious. So it was not for nothing that $15 an hour succeeded in so many cities once we won in Seattle, because it's their example of winning victories that's contagious. And so we should reject the false dichotomy between local versus national, like, oh, well, this worked locally but not nationally. I know some people also have asked, well, in Seattle, I'm sure all the council members supported $15 an hour. In Congress, you have Joe Manchin and the Republicans. No, let me tell you this. On $15 an hour and on virtually every victory that we have won, the overwhelming number of those, including 15, started with one reliable vote on the council, mine. And then we were able to win either unanimous or supermajority victories on those demands. Why? Because we forced the Democratic establishment and forced the cautious and timid progressive Democrats to concede, because we were willing to use our office in a different way, in a way that the squad and Bernie Sanders haven't been willing to use. So again, it's a question of what strategy can win and what doesn't win. And one of the points that a lot of us on the left were saying was that when there is a must-pass stimulus bill, that's leverage that the squad could have used to force $15 an hour inside the stimulus package. And our point was very much a strategic question, which is, if Joe Manchin is willing to go to the mat for the class he represents, which is big business and Wall Street, then our side, the left, those who represent working people, also have to use a fighting approach. And in Seattle also, the only reason we won it was because we used the fighting approach, not because we had the support of the Democratic Party. In fact, most of the Democrats fought against the progressive victories that we have won. In fact, just 2 days ago, progressive Democrats shot down a very basic demand for renters that I had brought forward, which is to have a publicly funded legal aid for those fighting evictions. So, all of these examples, concrete examples, show that when we win with a fighting strategy and a socialist strategy. And I'll just say, when we fought for 15, what we overcame was not only the opposition of big business and their overt supporting Democrats and overtly corporate politicians. What we overcame was also the timidity of some of the labor leaders and the progressive Democrats who were not willing to challenge big business head on. And there's this idea, I think some of the squad members might have, that we could win victories without taking on big business interests head on. But such a thing is not possible. We only won 15 because we built the 15 Now movement, which held rallies, marches, action conferences, and ultimately we had a winning tactic, which was a credible threat in the form of a ballot initiative where we said, if the city council Democrats don't pass 15, we will take it directly to the voters. And big business openly admitted that had it not been for that tactic, had it not been for that street movement 15 Now, they would not have conceded.
And something that I find kind of, I don't know, just I guess dumbfounding is, when Manchin was willing to essentially just shut it down. I think he delayed the final passage of the 1.9 trillion stimulus by at least a day or two. And frankly, I think the perception that was, that Biden and the Democrats were trying to put forth, that this was somehow like the New Deal. We saw corporate media people framing this as rewriting the social safety net, which, to me, again, we live in this better than nothing dynamic, but it is not. It is not what is needed considering the proportion of the crisis. But what I found kind of dumbfounding is, I think the importance of politics and movements is understanding when you have a moment, because they don't come so often. I think you understand the need to capitalize off a moment. And in this moment, which is not just a public health crisis, but a economic crisis, a spiritual crisis, so many people struggling emotionally, with so many people that just feel kind of up the river without a paddle. You had a moment to actually do more than move the Overton window, but to actually put the pressure on the corporatists that have been depriving you of this relief. And it seems to me that, again, I'm just pointing at the squad because they are the people that would be fighting on our behalf in Congress. It seems to me like they're almost afraid because they think that the public overall would not be in support if they fought. But to me, I think the polls and just common sense indicates if they would have met Joe Manchin with, well, we're going to shut it down if it's not in there, I think the public would have overwhelmingly supported that.
Oh, I mean, look at the polls on $15 an hour on Medicare for all, and also the idea of creating a massive jobs program. These are hugely popular. I mean, let's be clear. The stimulus package that has been passed by the US Congress and the Biden administration, it is important. It is going to make a real difference in people's lives in this urgent moment. But we should also be clear, that is not some sort of beneficence on the part of the Democratic establishment. Ultimately, what this stimulus package indicates is their own need to save their own system, which is an complete crisis right now. It is not only the pandemic, there is a long-term crisis in the capitalist system. And you can see this happening worldwide. It's not just the Biden administration. In country after country under capitalism, we're seeing governments pass the kind of stimulus that you haven't seen in the neoliberal era. So there's definitely a real shift there. But the whole debacle on $15 an hour also shows the what the real problem is and where the disagreements are. And as you said, it's important to take advantage of that moment. I mean, let's make note of the fact that it wasn't Manchin who took out the $15 an hour from the Senate bill. It was Schumer and Biden. I mean, so in other words, it was the Democrats who had made promises on $15 an hour. Let's not forget, Biden made a promise on $15 an hour, and they themselves took it out of the Senate bill. It wasn't Manchin, and much less it wasn't the Republicans who had to do that. So in other words, what they are doing themselves is bending to the interests of corporate, the corporate wing of their party, and they are themselves the corporate wing, because it's not like Biden couldn't bring the senators in line because he's some sort of shrinking violet. No, I mean, a lot of people said, oh, the senators from Delaware themselves, voted against that. So why couldn't you bring them in line? That Biden somehow doesn't have guts. No, Biden has guts. He is fighting for his side, which is Wall Street interests. And unfortunately, the passage of the stimulus also indicates their own desire to save their own system. So we have to be very clear which side they are on. And that's why it was important that there was this debate before the stimulus and the $15 vote. There was the debate that came to be known as Force the Vote, where a section of the left was saying, let's make sure that we use this opportunity rather than voting for Nancy Pelosi and giving her, just like a blank check, a rubber stamping of her position as speaker, that the squad should use that moment to force a vote on Medicare for all. And at that time, AOC and other squad members said, well, that's not good strategy. Let's focus on a winning strategy, something like $15 an hour. But then we came to $15 an hour, and they did the same thing. So I think it's important to point out that the disagreements are not about this or that tactic. I mean, those disagreements are valid, and in any serious left movements, we will have to have serious discussions and honest debates, and sometimes we will disagree. But I think that what's really underlying what happened with the force the vote and what happened with $15 an hour and the stimulus bill is a refusal to have a head-on conflict with the Democratic establishment, with their own party. And one, it shows how that strategy doesn't work, and why Seattle won is because we had a socialist strategy, a fighting strategy. And secondly, it also shows how it is like beating your head against a brick wall to be part of a party that represents interests that are diametrically opposed to the interests of working people. You know, the Democratic establishment, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all of them represent Wall Street interests. They have some differences with the previous Trump regime, and it's really, really important that the majority of Americans sent a repudiation message to Trump by defeating him in the election. But at the end of the day, one thing that the Democratic establishment and the Republican Party both have in common is that they both serve Wall Street interests. And so it's not working for us, for working people, to continue to put our forces inside the Democratic Party. This also brings up the question of a new party. But regardless of which whether you're in the Democratic Party or you're independent like me, you're not going to win victories without a fighting strategy. So in other words, what we were saying was, not only should you use your to the squad numerical balance of power to withhold the vote on this must-pass stimulus bill and insist that $15 an hour is made part of it, fight to the mat like Joe Manchin does, and but not stop at that. It is not just about antics on the congressional floor. This is about a serious strategy for the left. So what we were arguing for is for that strategy to be used alongside the squad, making a call for hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, to come out and march on the streets in West Virginia, in Arizona, in Georgia. And these are key states because West Virginia and Arizona are states where Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema are senators from. But Georgia is important because the Black working class vote was mobilized by Biden saying, just vote for us, we've got your back. Well, the Democratic Party establishment has not got your back if you are a Black worker, or if you are one of the tens of millions of Americans who is suffering during a pandemic at the same time that the billionaire class in America has gotten over $1 trillion richer. So this really does bring up serious questions of strategy, and we have to grapple with them.
And as a reminder, folks, got almost 400 live, so smash the like button. It's right under the video. More people that press like, the more people that will see this. I wanted to ask you also, because to me, I think you said something in a different interview that really spoke to me. I think a lot of the naysayers, whether it be to force the vote, whether it be to, trying to block the stimulus bill in demanding that the minimum wage be put in there, I think a lot of people wrongly have said you shouldn't bother doing it if it's not going to work right away. And among some who, claim to be progressive, the measuring stick has been victory or tangible results now. Let's not try anything if it's not certain to be victorious. But my reading of history, and I know movement history very well, is that's not how movements work. And that's not how any successful movement has worked. In fact, for long-term success, you need to have defeats as kind of those building blocks. I mean, none of us have 100 years to keep on losing, but you need to have some defeats just to kind of get the public consciousness raised on these issues. And, for example, with this minimum wage battle, it's unlikely if these 7 or 8 House members coalesce together as a bloc to stop it. They probably would have folded at some point, because I think it's very clear through President Biden signaling before the quote parliamentarians decision, which was a lot of BS, that they were not going to move heaven and earth for $15 minimum wage. However, if they would have fought, maybe you don't win it right this minute, but it helps galvanize the movement, galvanize organizers, galvanize just normal Americans behind you. It helps raise the public consciousness to exactly what you said. Well, wait a minute here. This is the only campaign promise you made, a $15 minimum wage. You're the president. You got all houses. So actually there's some pressure put on these politicians, and it sets up the infrastructure, in my opinion, to win the next try or the next try. So what do you have to say to these people that they seem to say you shouldn't bother if it's not guaranteed to win right now on this try?
I think the first thing to note is that we are guaranteed to lose and lose and lose if we don't have a fighting strategy. This is what we have seen. And as you said correctly, the one promise Biden made was $15 an hour, and he betrayed working people on that promise. So if victory is the yardstick, then look at Seattle's example. Look at the example of a socialist fighting office where we have won victory after victory. And as I said before, victories that were thought of as impossible, but we made them happen precisely because we were willing to look at this as this is what we should be looking at nationally as well, which is that this is a system of capitalism where the forces of the wealthy are not in alignment with the interests of working people, and trying to get them in alignment with the interests of working people is like trying to square a circle. It is never going to happen. It is an impossibility. In other words, what we are guaranteed to do is to not win victories for working people if we continue on this path of not trying to have conflict with the establishment. And I think that even when genuine people, I mean, this is not a question of intention, it's a question of looking past what fears people may have unconsciously. When people say that we should not do it unless we are guaranteed to win, what they're really worried about is not whether they will win that first time or not. What they're worried about is that there are powerful enemies that are going to be absolutely furious with you if you have the temerity to fight. And my response to that is yes, absolutely, yes. What did Frederick Douglass say? Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. So I think that is a very basic component. If we are going to build a serious left, if we are to actually win Medicare for all, $15 an hour, and address the climate catastrophe that is at the planet's doorstep, then it is going to be a non-starter if we don't have leadership in our movements that understands that there is no universe where you can win these victories and not make the ruling class angry. Yes, they will be absolutely angry with you. They will come after you with everything they've got. What are our choices? Lay down and die, or actually fight back and have the possibility of winning. So in other words, the debate really, I mean, to put it in honest terms, the debate is not between winning guaranteed or not winning at all. It is a debate between it is actually a debate between maybe winning if we fight back or not winning at all, because there is nothing in between. There is no possibility of actually making some progress without actually having a fighting strategy. And I think Medicare for all is a good example, because now you have Congress members putting forward a bill. I mean, we have to be clear. The whole history of the fight for Medicare for all shows that it is not simply a matter of putting a bill forward. It is a matter of actually going to fight. So what does that mean? Going to fight for Medicare for all? What does that mean? It means really putting a spotlight on each of those politicians, including in the Democratic Party, who clearly stands against Medicare for all. Meaning, not only about speaking in Congress about how much you support Medicare for all, but actually calling them out by name. And I think this is where the problem lies. One of the reasons there is a clear difference between why we haven't won 15 federally and why we won 15 in Seattle is because we had leadership here that was willing to call out the Democrats who were not willing to fight for 15 and support 15. But what that means ultimately, Jordan, and I think this is the crux of the problem, what that means is that when you are in a leadership position, sometimes when you're elected to legislature like Congress or like the city council, if you are an elected leader in the labor movement, or if you are an unelected but sort of nominated leader in a street movement, it will mean you will make enemies with the ruling class. That means it will make your life uncomfortable. My life on the city council is not comfortable in the sense that I don't go there for friendship and respect and approval. they will treat you very badly. They will hurl insults at you. They will call you vicious. They will call you odious. You will have, as we had in 2019, Latina progressive Democrats, women running a candidate against you saying, oh, we agree with everything Sawant stands for, but she's not nice. She doesn't know how to build relationships. You will have all kinds of personal attacks against you. But you have to understand that is all, that is all on the surface. What they are really opposing is your willingness to fight for working people. So what will Medicare for All need? It will need these Congress members who are progressive to call out each and every Congress member, including Nancy Pelosi, by name, saying Nancy Pelosi does not support Medicare for All because she stands with big business. It will require them to say this. I'm saying it now. They need to say it. But on top of that, that's not going to be enough. We would not have won $15 an hour had we not, as I said before, built the 15 Now movement. And similarly, for Medicare for All, we will need progressive Congress members, the leaders of labor unions together to join, and we will join with them. Socialist Alternative will join with them, but we need them to do this, where they call for mass action conferences nationwide, mass rallies, call mass marches in Washington, D.C., use a confrontational approach, because what that approach does is it will bring out millions of people who do support Medicare for All. And that goes back to your original question, Jordan, is that why is it that we don't see these victories being won when a majority of America supports it? I mean, the support for Medicare for All is tremendous, and Republicans support Medicare for All. It has real potential to unite people, not only who voted Democrat, but it also has the potential to bring in Trump voters, because many of them are just disenchanted people who correctly hate corporate politics as a whole.
And to me, something that gets lost in all this is, and again, I like all of them. So it's not a personality thing, but I think something as simple as calling them out by name, it seems to be they're not willing to do that. Even Bernie Sanders, who talks about revolution, does not seem willing to call them out by name. And I'm not asking them to call them out by name so that I could get clicks off of it on YouTube and rant. But I think it's important, if you have, for example, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez is not lacking for attention from the media. She could pretty much go on any show she wants, whenever she wants. But I see this hesitation to even mildly critique President Biden, or I saw Congresswoman Omar on, where she seemed to be a little hesitant to criticize Biden. And I don't know if it's simply because, again, we're all human, and obviously they get a lot of threats and attacks on Congress, or if they have this misguided notion, because it seems to me, Congresswoman Jayapal in your backyard in Washington State, they seem to think that the way to go is actually try to expand your coalition, get some of these establishment politicians. Congresswoman Jayapal, for example, just relaunched the Medicare for All bill today, and they're making a big thing that now they have some of these establishment Democrats who previously were against it now as co-sponsors. But I think, as you said, you could resubmit the bill till you're blue in the face. You can get more people to verbally or performatively say they're for it. But if the president of the United States has said, I don't care if it passes, if it comes to my desk, I'm going to veto it. Well, there's your answer. And it doesn't matter what you do legislative maneuvering wise, what you do getting more of these traditionally establishment people on your corner. If the ruling class, because I think Biden is just doing the bidding of the ruling class, as was Trump, if they're not going to do it, then you need kind of more of an outside guerrilla strategy. So you can't get in their heads, but do you feel that they're wasting time trying to resubmit the bill and get more establishment people on? Because it seems to me that's their strategy, try and win the hearts and minds of some of these establishment folks to hop on board with the legislation.
Right. I mean, I think we absolutely need coalition building. In fact, we would not have won any of our victories if Socialist Alternative was by itself. We won victories precisely because we built coalitions that were successful in winning victories. But it's a question of what kind of coalitions and coalition with whom. We did not try to form coalitions with the corporate politicians in City Hall. No, we were absolutely clear whose side we were on. We formed coalitions with progressive labor unions, with ordinary people on the streets who were willing to fight back but had no influence, no organization to speak for them. Many of them were in union rank and file, but many of them also were non-unionized workers. And the way we did it was by empowering them and building a coalition in the grassroots. So when we held the 15 Now action conferences, we got hundreds of people, ordinary people who have no power otherwise except for being in organized solidarity with others like themselves. And we spoke with a combined voice. That's a coalition, but that's not the kind of coalition that you were talking about. The coalition that some of these Congress members are trying to build are with people we know are not on our side. I mean, what kind of coalition are you going to build with someone like Nancy Pelosi when it's very clear she has spent 4 decades in Congress opposing the interests of working people? So it is foolhardy to say that somehow you're going to build a coalition with people who have spent decades in their career opposing very, very things that are very, very important to ordinary people. And this is not the first go around on Medicare for all. So, I'll give you an example in a second, but when progressives, let's not question their intentions. As I said, we don't need to do that. We don't need to be mind readers. Let's look at the outcomes. When you as a progressive try to build a coalition with corporate politicians, what will happen is that they are not going to bend to you. They will force you to bend to them. In other words, what will happen is that we won't get Medicare for all by that strategy, because it is precisely by that strategy we haven't won Medicare for all so far. US is the richest country in the history of humanity, and we have the worst healthcare among the industrialized countries. Why? Because this strategy has been used for decades and it hasn't worked. So if you want to be data driven, and if you want to be if you want to base yourself on victories, then realize that this is not a victory strategy. It is a losing strategy. But what's behind all this is also important, and I don't think we should underestimate how difficult it is. I mean, I can tell you, having been in office as an independent socialist, having fought the establishment for 7.5 years now, with everything thrown at me, all kinds of attacks thrown at me, it's not easy. It is very, very hard. There's a lot of pressure on you, either to bend and become part of the big business establishment and become innocuous, become completely harmless, have no effectiveness at all, or stay on your principles but become marginalized and have no power either, despite your principles. So what we have done is dodge both those pitfalls and succeed while remaining principled, precisely because we have been crystal clear. I, as an elected representative of working people, do not go to City Hall thinking these are my work colleagues. I need their respect and friendship and approval. Therein lies the problem. And it is very hard to go into a workplace every day where the people who are supposedly on your side and working with you are your arch enemies. And that's just the way it is. It is because you have to remember, it's not a normal workplace. This is capitalism. And some politicians are going to overtly represent the interests of the capitalist class. Some politicians will not overtly represent the interests of the capitalist class, but will be unwilling to challenge the bosses, challenge the status quo. And there you are. You have to decide, what are you going to do? Are you going to be part of this ineffective middle, whatever progressive, where they do nothing, but they say nice things? Are you going to be overtly pro-corporate? What are you going to do? So what we did, we rejected both those avenues. And instead, we built our power from the grassroots by empowering other people, by understanding that this is not about you. This is not about me as an elected leader. It is about bringing tens of thousands of people's voices into City Hall, bringing that army into City Hall that can go up against the power of big business. And ultimately, we cannot have delusions of grandeur. We can, capitalism is a deeply hostile system to working people, and winning reforms will not be enough. But even to win these reforms, there is a kind of change in balance of power that you have to bring about if you are to win something. So it's a coalition, yes, but coalition with whom? not with people who oppose the very thing you stand for. So if you're trying to win Medicare for all, don't go and build coalition with people who oppose Medicare for all. Go to the tens of millions of Americans who do want Medicare for all, who will come out and fight for it, organize rallies, mass action conferences, bring out the voice of the people. But herein lies the problem, Jordan. When you as an elected representative, you start doing that, you start empowering people and organizing rallies, what happens? The other elected officials start hating you. And then they start saying things like, oh, she's odious, she's vicious, she doesn't know how to talk to people, she doesn't know how to build relationships. Well, guess what? Every time ordinary people have had their leaders fight for them, those leaders have come under attack. What do you think they said about MLK? What do you think they said about Malcolm X? My point is that there is no other way in which to accomplish this. Yes, you have to understand that those politicians who are against the interests of working people are also against you. They are not your friends. Your friends are working people. Go to them for respect and approval and support. So the way to not be isolated is to build that kind of support. And we did this in Seattle. Imagine the scale at which we could do this if we had elected representatives actually fighting for Medicare for all, calling for mass conferences in state after state where people, unions, community organizations all come and fight for it, especially in the middle of a pandemic. It is a hugely popular issue.
And I also think I'd like to get your thoughts. We all know in our life, there's been times we've had to argue for things that maybe we don't really have a good argument, or we, for whatever reason, have to kind of exaggerate. But in this case, I mean, you are on such solid ground that it's not just progressives that support the things you're talking about. It's people who voted for Joe Biden, people who voted for Hillary Clinton that are economically in shambles right now, even people, conservatives that are devastated by coronavirus economically, libertarians, you name it. And the thing that I find so startling is, obviously, we don't want to adopt former President Trump's policies or racism or any of that. But I think part of what drew people to him was that he was presenting himself as a fighter. It might have been a lot of bullshit, but he was at least presenting himself as a fighter. Bernie, what has attracted millions to him, yes, the policies, but the presentation of being a fighter. I think that is why a lot of these Republicans, they tend to hoodwink people on the economics, but people gravitate towards politicians that are fighting. We're not talking about violence, but we're talking about at least standing for something. You might not always agree with every single thing, but at least fighting for them. I think why Trump, I mean, honestly, if not for a pandemic that he badly mismanaged, probably would have won in a landslide, because he did keep a lot of his promises to the voters. They were mostly terrible things, but the politicians that seem to be fighting the establishment and actually fighting to keep promises, there seems to be a large public draw to those politicians, even if a lot of them don't stand for what you or I stand for. So my whole point in all this is, again, might not win on each try, but maybe fighting a little beyond tweets would actually galvanize the troops politically to reach your political goals.
Yeah, I think ultimately what the whole Trump example shows, and I think unfortunately there is truth to what you're saying, Jordan, that if Trump had not completely mismanaged the response to the pandemic, then it's not clear what would have happened. And in fact, what the Trump phenomenon, and in fact, Trump may be defeated, but Trumpism hasn't gone away, and the threat of right populism still remains. And so this is a serious question for the left. It's not just about doing a review of the past. And the whole Trump phenomenon, what does it show more than anything? What it shows is the complete absence, the vacuum that absence of the left, the vacuum on the left that Trump was able to exploit. He's a con man. He's a billionaire and a reactionary billionaire who was able to act as a con man, take in these votes from people who, for the most part, are just fed up with corporate politics. They hate the Republicans, they hate the Democrats with good reason, because none of them has done anything for them. As you said, people's living standards have really cratered, not only, I mean, obviously through the pandemic, but even before then. And I think we have to be very clear. We have to build a united multiracial fight back against racism. We have to bring people of all genders together in a fight against sexual violence and against sexism. But the way to do that really is to bring about a larger unity among working people. And that's what Bernie Sanders' campaign showed. I mean, Bernie Sanders was a real counter to Donald Trump. And it was really unfortunate. I mean, we supported Bernie Sanders' campaign, but we disagreed with him dropping out of the campaign. We didn't agree with him capitulating to the Biden campaign, precisely because, as you were saying, Jordan, the reason Bernie Sanders got such an echo from tens of millions of people, this is somebody who calls himself a socialist. This is America. This is the belly of the capitalist beast. And an openly socialist politician was the most popular presidential candidate. What does that show? That shows that people are hungry for social change. And Bernie Sanders' call for a political revolution against the billionaire class to end student debt by taxing Wall Street, for Medicare for all, for everybody to have university education that is accessible and free, and to have decent quality, affordable housing. All of this spoke to a majority of people, and some of them ended up voting for Trump because they didn't have anything worth voting for, because they're not going to vote for a corporate politician. And what's unfortunate is that a reactionary, anti-worker, anti-union, anti-woman, anti-immigrant billionaire like Donald Trump was able to carry out that con job. That should be a wake-up call for the left, that we cannot rely on the corporate Democrats to figure out a solution for this, because they are not going to. Ultimately, they serve Wall Street interests as well. And so it really brings up urgently the question of a new party for working people that can unite people. I mean, a sobering thought is that over 70 million Americans voted for Donald Trump in this election. Unless we're going to make the absurd claim that they're all irredeemable reactionaries, which they are not. Obviously, there is a dangerous reactionary current, which is why it is urgent for the left to build. We cannot take it lightly. As I said, Trump may be defeated, but the threat of right populism remains. But the point is, what is the strategy to win over many of those 70 million people who voted for Trump? What is the strategy to bring them in a united working class movement? We are not going to be able to do that on the basis of being unwilling to confront people like Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden. What we will need is elected representatives and leaders in our movements who are willing to expose those corporate politicians for who they are, force them to pay a political price, and understand that, for example, the Black Lives Matter movement, the street protest, which became the largest ever street protest movement in US history, bringing out 26 million people in multiracial solidarity against racism and police violence, that shows the potential for uniting tens of millions of working people. But on what basis? Not by the basis of trying to make a deal and capitulate to the corporate Democrats, but on the basis of a working class struggle. I mean, Joe Manchin is from West Virginia. West Virginia has a proud history of militant labor organizing. And only a few years ago, teachers in West Virginia won a historic victory. Why? Because the rank and file union leaders in the strike action there refused to accept the deal that the higher up union leaders had made with the Republicans. They kept going on, they kept on strike, and they were able to win a historic victory. And that shows you that the states that went for Trump actually have a real opening for the left to organize. Florida, which went for Donald Trump in a big way, also passed a $15 minimum wage through a ballot initiative. That shows that the Republicans and the right wing, they are taking advantage of a vacuum on the left, and that should be a call to action for the left to provide an alternative to this failed strategy of bending to corporate politics.
And in the short term, if you were in a room with, let's just call it the squad plus, because there's some new folks that were elected that are pretty progressive. What would you suggest? Would you suggest Biden and the Democrats, they're going back to their favorite topic of an infrastructure bill that never seems to happen? Would you suggest, hey, You have the numbers. If Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema can shut down Washington or shut down, a minimum wage, Medicare for all, you name it, then going forward, say no. We're not going to give you our votes for whether it be infrastructure or anything else without the minimum wage, at least a floor vote on Medicare for all. What would be your preferred tactic legislatively for progressives to come together as a bloc?
I think the legislative tactics probably will depend on what the situation offers, what opportunities a given situation offers. But hands down, what I would say to the squad is something that I've already said, many times, which is that you will need to turn outwards. Use your elected office, use your podium to turn outwards and rally working people into action. I don't think that they can do it by themselves. And as I said, I don't doubt that they are genuinely intentioned, well-intentioned. And I don't doubt how hard it must be. I mean, I have experienced this in Seattle. I cannot even imagine what more of a cesspool Congress might be and how hard it might be for them. But the bottom line is, this is not about you as an elected representative. It is about what you can do to use your office to win victories for the masses of working people who are right now suffering in an unprecedented crisis. So I would say, I mean, as an elected representative myself, I would say we need to not make it about ourselves and how hard it is for us in elected office, but make it about what people need and then keep that at the center and talk about how hard it is for working people. I mean, right now we are facing the prospect of a tsunami of evictions. The average rental debt for over 12 million Americans is nearly $6,000. People are in deep crisis. How are we going to use our elected positions? We have to use them with a fighting strategy. And a fighting strategy for the squad plus right now means using their numerical balance of power to win victories. But as I said, not just as congressional floor tactics or some sort of hyperbole. It is using it strategically and understanding that you need to combine that with turning outwards by really organizing working people, meaning literally calling for rallies and mass actions. That needs to be happening, and that you need to have the courage to call out every politician, whether they're in your party or in the Republican Party, and expose them for who they are. Make them pay a political price for selling out working people. That is when you win victories. The way we won $15 an hour, even though when we started out, it was just my vote, we won a unanimous vote. How did we win that? Not by looking to these Democrats by me looking to them for friendship, but by calling them out openly, saying, you are against $15 an hour. Explain why. And what are you going to do? Are you going to vote for the interests of working people or not? Force a political price. And, that strategically, that is the kind of tactics that we need to use, tactics that force corporate politicians to pay a political price. Another thing I would mention, of course, is that, look, right now, the Democrats have the House, they have the Senate, they have the White House. They were elected with the mandate of representing working people. Instead, they are immediately bending to big business in all key issues. And we have seen, as you said, the parliamentarian whom none of us knew such a thing as a parliamentarian even existed. And now suddenly it's all about the parliamentarian, and suddenly the all-powerful President Biden and all-powerful Vice President Harris, they are completely powerless in front of this parliamentarian. But what we are seeing is they're dishonestly using procedure and technocratic excuses, and then they'll throw up Joe Manchin as an excuse to throw up their hands and say, we can't do anything. But they're going to do this again and again and again. The question to the squad is that how we're going to let this play out on issue after issue, where even though the Democrats have the majority in every house in Washington, D.C., still you're going to end up betraying working people's interests on issue after issue? That's the question. That is why we need the squad and Bernie Sanders to fight every bit as hard as the corporate politicians stand up for the class that they represent, and that you cannot use Manchin and Sinema as an excuse forever. We need ordinary people's interests to be represented, and that's why this is not only an issue for the squad. It is. I hope the people who are listening also understand that we need to harness grassroots power. We need to organize working people ourselves, and that is why no matter which city you're listening to this from, we have to get organized ourselves and not just forever depend on progressive Democrats hoping that they will deliver, because so far they've not agreed to deliver.
And my last question, real quick, other than Bernie Sanders, I don't know anyone in this country that has been as outspoken and effective against Amazon. And to me, Amazon really represents more than just Amazon. It represents a sickness in our society that really has gone back many decades, and that is of kind of social Darwinism masking as business. So many stories have come out recently about Amazon retaliating against workers who have tried to unionize, threatening workers, people saying, we'd be fired if we go to the bathroom too often at work. I've reported recently on a woman, a 38-year-old woman in Virginia, who was made to test coworkers, conduct nasal swabs on coworkers for COVID for many, many months. And in January, she just, at 38 years old, dropped dead. Don't know what of, because the family was too poor to do an autopsy, but we do know that she was doing COVID testing. She's not a nurse, not a doctor. I know, based on my reporting, Amazon intimidated workers not to speak about Pashawn Brown's death in the warehouse. I mean, the examples go on and on and on. So with that, we have the attempted unionization in Alabama. Right now, I believe it's, soon they'll be counting the votes. It's been mail-in voting. And if you speak with workers down there, Amazon's efforts to stop that are Herculean. So I want to ask you, to you, I mean, whatever happens, hopefully it does pass and they are unionized. What does this fight represent, the people of Alabama, and what should progressives, how should progressives view this, whether they successfully unionize or not?
I think this is the critical question for workers and the labor movement in the United States. It is the impact, if the workers are able to successfully unionize and have a successful yes vote union drive, then the impact of that is going to reverberate far beyond the gates of Alabama. It will be nothing short of a game changer for the union movement and for workers as a whole, because this is the first unionizing effort that would have succeeded against this behemoth, this corporation with $1 trillion global footprint, with so many billionaires with a share in the company. It's not just Jeff Bezos. And as you said, the company has left no stone unturned to try and undermine this union effort, including, in addition to the things that you mentioned, including spending upwards of $10,000 a day on anti-union consultants. So it really, as you said, it shows you the real face of capitalism. Amazon is not an exception, but it shows you what capitalism really stands for. And it's really crucial that unions in every city around the United States stand in solidarity with RWDSU, the union that is trying to unionize the workers in Bessemer, Alabama. And in fact, socialist alternative members are on the ground standing with the union members there and the union organizers there and with the workers, and really helping to push that effort. I think that solidarity is going to be crucial for the workers, not only because the union struggle in itself is important, but because of the impact it could have beyond that. I have no doubt that it will help, if this vote is won, it will help union struggles in Amazon warehouses around the nation, but also in really helping to do what we really need at this moment is not just a revitalizing of the union movement, but a really root and branch renewal of the labor movement, where we need a real shift away from what we have seen in the last decades, which is business unionism, where most of the business leaders come in as staff who believe that their main role is to manage expectations of their members and to really negotiate very small changes by having meetings with the bosses and mainly looking at the membership of the union as a lobbying force. No, we need a complete shift away from that, back to the proud militant labor movement era of the United States, which, among other things, forced FDR to put in the New Deal. And that was a militant, democratically organized union struggle led by socialists inside the union movement, where the members of the union were fighters and understood that the union is an organ of class struggle. It is not a lobbying force. It's an organ of class struggle. That is what we need. And I think the unionizing drive in Alabama is a beginning of what we need to see. It was important that West Virginia teachers also won the victory. It's also crucial that Bernie Sanders is relentlessly calling out Amazon for its anti-union efforts, and his voice is extremely important. And I think at the end of the day, we also have to talk about how these union struggles need to succeed, and also we need to raise the question of democratic public ownership of these big corporations like Amazon, the energy corporations in Texas, who really caused such untold misery for over 4 million people in the state during the frigid temperatures, the democratic public ownership of fossil fuel corporations, because without that, we are not going to be able to move towards clean energy. So I think all of these larger questions are wrapped up in this, and it is crucial that we bring in all kinds of solidarity to bear so that we stand with the Amazon workers in Alabama.
Well, thank you for being the best organ of class struggle that I know, and for joining us. Seattle City Council member Kshama Sawant. We'll stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Jordan.
Thanks. So that was Kshama Sawant, who I've interviewed her in Seattle. I wish she was, in Congress or in the Senate or a higher profile, but it is super, super valuable to have folks like her on the local level. Seattle, make no mistake about it, Seattle would not have $15 minimum wage if not for her and the socialist alternative that she's with, fighting for it and demanding it and organizing for it. They wouldn't have even gotten the bare minimum of police reforms that they've gotten in the wake of the George Floyd and Black Lives Matter protests that council member Kshama Sawant's, frankly, organizing and agitation has gotten. So really appreciate her coming on. And, to me, it's funny, for example, just to give you a behind the scenes, some of you are like, Jordan, pay attention. Well, I kind of have to do everything. So I was sending the live stream to different groups on Twitter. And obviously the headline of the live stream says, "Why won't progressives fight?" And I'll read the super chats, so keep them coming. We very much need your super chats. Very, very much need your super chats, because YouTube has been throttling the hell out of this channel and really making it difficult just to earn enough money to keep going. So please, if you got a couple bucks, drop it in the super chat. But I sent the live stream, which was on Twitter and Twitch, because we're live on a bunch of places, to different groups. And somebody responded, one of the activists in the groups they are fighting. And this to me is the fundamental gap here. This is the fundamental gap among progressives. I respect, for example, Congresswoman Jayapal. I believe she stands for a lot of the things that somebody like Kshama Sawant stands for. But the difference is, at a certain point, you have to realize you're not operating with people of good faith. Let me repeat that. You're not operating with people in good faith. Let me give you an example of what I mean by that. Bernie Sanders took the political world by storm in 2016. No one, including Bernie Sanders, expected his campaign to take off the way it did. No one expected him to win as many primaries as he did. No one expected Medicare for all and a lot of the policies Bernie championed to start rising in popularity. And as such, lickety split. You had Kamala Harris at the time, Kirsten Gillibrand, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, all of these Johnny-come-lately progressives jumping on board to co-sponsor Medicare for all. Okay. But is there any evidence that they did that out of principle? Is there any evidence that they did that because they evolved? They saw the light? They realized that this was the right policy? Absolutely not. Every single one of them moonwalked as fast as Michael Jackson away from Medicare for all. So Pramila Jayapal, for example, today reintroduced the Medicare for All bill, but without what Kshama Sawant is talking about, it doesn't matter. You could write a bill that is blessed by Jesus. You could write a bill that is on the policy amazing. I actually think the original bill written by Jayapal was better than Bernie's bill in the Senate. Jayapal's bill would go into effect in 2 years. Bernie's would go into effect in 4 years. But it really doesn't matter if you reintroduce the bill. It doesn't matter if Jayapal, for example, was tweeting out, excited that they have gotten New Jersey Congressman Frank Pallone, who's an establishment corporate hack, on board to co-sponsor it. None of that matters if you're not willing to play hardball. I use the term fight in the headline because it's simple and it makes sense. But if you're not willing to threaten, and to be clear, because YouTube, can't decipher between political talk and violence. We're not talking about violence. Nobody's talking about violence. I don't endorse that. But if you're not willing to politically threaten power, if you're not willing to actually make President Biden pause for a second, if you're not willing to make Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer pause and say, oh shit, if we don't give them something, we're not going to even get the stimulus bill through. Or if we don't give them something, we're not even going to get, our infrastructure through. Or, the next thing they're rallying about is this Voting Rights Act, which is all great and important. I think their Voting Rights Act, if you actually read in between the lines, is to concentrate the two-party duopoly and try to make it impossible for a real third-party movement in this country. And I think they're dressing it up as voting rights and stop Republican voter suppression. Read the bill. It's structured in a way that would make it very difficult for third parties in this country. But putting all that aside, resubmitting the bill or expanding the coalition so you have a couple more establishment politicians co-sponsoring it, I don't have 20 years. You don't have 20 years. All of this is small ball, incremental strategy. I believe Kshama Sawant is right that you need to step outside of DC. And I want to be very clear. I don't think they're the fraud squad. I don't think they're frauds. I don't think they're sellouts. Frankly, I think all of this talk and attacks on progress, whatever. I mean, they're politicians, so if you want to criticize them, criticize them. But I think all this kind of 16-year-old childish, you're sellouts, this and frauds, I don't think it's helpful. I think we could criticize them, frankly, shame them if you want. I would have personally, if I had the power, I would start the hashtag right now. AOC, where's the ruckus? AOC, where's the ruckus? Short, sweet, to the point. If you are a better hashtag maker, come up with a better term. That doesn't require calling them sellouts. That doesn't require calling them anything. But where's the ruckus? Because honestly, if you're not willing to actually tell them, no, there will be consequences if you do not give us something, then you're never going to get anything. Pramila Jayapal could put forth this bill. I'm sure it's a great bill. I'm sure I would agree with it. I haven't read it. But if you are not willing to actually scare them politically, Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, Dick Durbin, Tim Kaine, all of these people, if you're not willing to threaten their power, if you're not willing to say, oh no, we will blow up the House, we will torpedo this bill, we will sink it, and we will take the heat. We'll take the heat from the media. We'll take the heat from the think tanks. We'll take the heat. Then we're going to be just doing this rinse and repeat cycle over and over and over and over again. Jordan, are you willing to tell people to withdraw support? Asinine pirate. So let me make something clear, because I'm seeing a few comments. Oh, there's Jordan defending them, this and that. If somebody being a little nuanced triggers you, then don't watch me. I'm not, I trust me, it would be a lot easier just to rant, rave, and be angry, and it'd probably give me a whole lot more clicks. But I could have sold that a long time ago for clicks. I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to be me. if it's not strong enough for you, if it's not a strong enough condemnation, if me not going like, God damn them, they're fucking frauds and sellouts and blah, 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 blah. If that ain't enough for you, then go somewhere else. I really don't give a shit. I'm not here to feed your righteous indignation. And frankly, I shame them as much as the next guy. I just, or girl or gal, I do it my way. Because my goal is to win. My goal is to win, not to feel good and call them sellouts, this, that, the other thing. You're not going to get anywhere just calling everyone sellouts. Maybe that makes you feel good, but you're not going to get anywhere doing that. So to me, how do you actually convince these people to act? You got to shame them. You got to pressure them. So to me, honestly, I think progressives need to get their head out of their ass. And I think they need to start social media campaigns, digital media, if and when it gets safer, because I don't think now is the time for everyone to gather and mass protest during a pandemic. I think you need to say, where's the ruckus, AOC? PAYGO will not save you. Them cheering on, we got a PAYGO exemption. Like that's the new deal. So at a certain point saying, if you're not willing to threaten power, then yeah, we are going to start talking about getting some candidates to primary you. Not because we hate you, not because we don't think you believe in the policies, but because you're not effective. Because you're not effective if you're not willing to fight. And I think what Kshama Sawant was saying is so important. Of course, you're not going to win on the first try or the second try. But if you don't fight at all, if you don't try at all, you're certainly not going to win. So to me, we had the best we had two major opportunities that, frankly, I don't know if we're going to get a better opportunity than we had with Pelosi needing the progressives to become speaker again. We squandered that because they wouldn't fight. And now, you definitely could have got a minimum wage increase. It might have not been $15 an hour, but you definitely could have pressured at least to call Manchin's bluff and get it up to 11. Is that enough? Hell no. But they didn't even try at all. They just said, okay, well, the parliamentarian and let's be deferential to President Biden here. Call them out or be their cheerleader, Jordan. Hello, Soul. Kindly go somewhere else. Because to me, this is the kind of YouTube viewer or viewer in general that is so destructive, not just to the progressive movement, but just to critical thought. Because I think people like you, I don't know you from a hole in the wall, but I just saw your comment. I think people like you are why progressives are indefinitely going to be in the minority and be losers. Because people like you only think black or white. And there's some YouTube hosts that only think black or white. And they don't see any nuance at all. And they don't see any gray area at all. And it's just all or nothing. People are either sellouts, and if you don't call them a sellout, you're a sellout. If you don't call them a sellout, you're a sellout. If you don't call them frauds, you're too soft, blah, 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 blah. You live on your island where you all can, rant and rave and be happy amongst your anger. And I'll live on keeping it real. Because the reality is, we're not going to get to where we want only through electoral politics. Okay. It doesn't matter how many progressives you elect. And honestly, it doesn't even matter if every single one of them start doing what we're saying. The United Corporations of America, the corruption of this country, did not happen overnight. It did not happen overnight. The corruption and essentially legalized auction of our government. It took many, many, many decades, honestly, half a century at this point, to create this corporate capture of our government. So it's not going to change overnight. But my whole point is, if your goal, whether it's as a YouTube watcher or as a just progressive, if your goal is to win, WIN, then just cheapening everything down to this simple, they're sellouts or you're a sellout if you don't condemn them, or you're a sellout if you don't call people sellouts, you're not going to win that way. And you're not convincing anyone to do what you want that way. There are ways to shame the politicians. There are ways to pressure the politicians into doing what you want. without, ranting and raving and basically calling them Lucifer. So if you don't get that, then too bad. So anyway, I want to point out something out. I want to call out something else out, and keep those super chats coming. I'm going to read it. I watched this Biden clip, and it's such an alternate reality. It's such an alternate reality. And the media, of course, does not push back at all. They're too busy slobbering over this man. It's honestly, at this point, it's shameful. We saw it during the campaign. They let him lie about everything. They let him lie about his civil rights record, that he was out there in South Africa, meeting Mandela when Mandela was freed. Total bullshit. They let him lie about being on the front lines of the civil rights movement. They let him lie about his Iraq war vote. They let him lie all the way to the White House. But Biden said this during an interview with George Stephanopoulos, and I thought it was very, very interesting. So I'm going to play it for you. Let's take a look.
The question of. So you got to work for the filibuster.
So you're for that reform. You're for bringing back the talking filibuster.
I am. That's what it was supposed to be. Look, I think, don't hold me to the numbers, George, but I think between 1960 and 2000, there were like, I'm making this number up, I don't know. There were like, 50 filibusters. And now they're like 200 since then. Since that
just put a hold on it, that's it.
Yeah. I mean, so the idea, it almost is getting to the point where there's, democracy's having a hard time functioning. And so, look, I'm not saying this is going to be easy, George, but I do. And so, look, I'm not saying this is going to be easy, George, but I do believe there's enough Republicans over time who are going to have, look,
they haven't had that epiphany you said you were going to see in the campaign.
No, well, I've only been here 6 weeks, pal. Okay, give me a break. Been here 6 weeks. I think the epiphany is going to come between now and 2022. This is there's 78% of the people say they support this program. 52% of Republicans. Let's assume it's off, but.
So what I love there, democracy's having a hard time functioning. Did you hear that? Democracy is having a hard time functioning. And George, Stephanopoulos, of course, is too busy slobbering all over him. Well, yeah, democracy is having a very hard time functioning, but not because of the filibuster. That's one of the reasons. But maybe because people like you, President Biden, are corrupt. Maybe because you say, give me a break. I've only been here 6 weeks. Well, maybe because in 6 weeks, you broke at least 4 or 5 of the only campaign promises you even made. $15 minimum wage. You promised $2,000 checks if those 2 senators won in Georgia. You also said a public option, even though that's mysteriously left your vocabulary. You hear Biden talking about a public option anymore? I don't. So this notion, democracy is having a hard time functioning. Yeah, democracy is having a very hard time functioning, because when 70% of people want universal government health care and you say no, you are openly hostile to democracy. You are openly hostile to representative government because you're not representing the will of the people. If 70% of people want something and you're saying, no, I'm not going to do it, well, is that democracy, or is that you going against the democratic public sentiment? When an overwhelming majority, not just of Democrats, of Republicans support a $15 minimum wage, and you sit here with your bullshit gaslighting to say, oh, no, well, the Senate parliamentarian, we can't do anything because, the Senate parliamentarian, blah, 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 the Senate parliamentarian. You don't care about democracy. If you did care about democracy, you would be representing the people. You would be honoring the will of the people. This is not like gray area stuff where it's like, 50% to 49%. Overwhelming majority support these things, but you are hostile to it. So don't give me a bunch of bullshit about, oh, democracy is having a hard time functioning. Maybe democracy is having a hard time functioning because you are hostile to democracy. So is Nancy Pelosi. So is Chuck Schumer. Clearly, Mitch McConnell, Ron Johnson, Trump, and all these lunatics are. None of these people believe in democracy. All of these people have been captured by their donors. That's their idea of democracy, providing crumbs to the starving masses, while, here and there, we'll give you some, little crumbs of change. That's democracy to them. All of these people, and I love Crystal, I love Sagar, I love all these people, but I see a lot of stuff about the filibuster and how getting rid of the filibuster will suddenly, open the seas. Well, how is I am for getting rid of the filibuster, to be clear, but how is just simply getting rid of the filibuster going to do anything if you don't have even the Democratic Party completely honoring that they will support these measures that democracy says they should? We live in a representative democracy, or we're supposed to. I've been telling you for years, we don't live in a democracy. So we live in a representative democracy, yet you had 8 senators when Bernie put forward the amendment to put the $15 minimum wage, to have that voted on, just straight vote on it. You had 8 Democratic senators vote against it. Is that democracy? Kristen Sinema, Joe Manchin, they're voting against the popular public sentiments in the states that they represent. And Biden is trying to pretend that really the problem with democracy here is, Mitch McConnell isn't forced to stand up for 9 hours as he's filibustering and read from the phone book like the good old days. That's not the problem. The problem is, even if you got rid of the filibuster, the Democratic Party, and it's the same thing for the Republican Party when they're in rule, they go against democracy. They go against the very promises they told the voters. They go against what they said they would do. I don't have a lot of nice things to say about Trump, but one thing I'll give him, he honored most of his promises. He honored, I'm going to try to build that wall. I mean, he didn't, but he built something. He said, I'm going to be as racist and xenophobic to immigrants as I can. And he certainly was. He said, I'm going to, repeal NAFTA or whatever. I mean, it was basically a knockoff NAFTA light, but he did. He kept a lot of his promises. Most of them weren't good. But the Democratic Party and Biden, they want to punk you. They want to gaslight you into thinking we even live in a democracy. We don't live in a democracy. A democracy is you elect people, you vote for people based on what they say they're going to do. Then they get elected and then they do it, or at least try to do it. We don't live in a democracy. We live in a fake democracy where one party is just openly racist, Islamophobic, and just horrendous. And the other one is economically corrupt and essentially just performance artists. They're performance populists. The Democrats. It's all performative bullshit. So, yeah, it's very frustrating seeing clips like that because, I expected the media to slobber all over Biden. It's downright unseemly, if you ask me. I mean, he hasn't been challenged once. The very, very few interviews. I think this was one of the first interviews he did with George Stephanopoulos. I don't think Stephanopoulos challenged him once. Not once. But we haven't lived in a democracy for a long time. And I think part of the problem is, and this goes back to what Council Member Kshama Sawant and I were talking about, you don't have the elected progressives that themselves ran as fighters, themselves were calling out this kind of shadow democracy that all of these corporate Democrats are essentially selling you down the river. You don't actually have them fighting this bullshit. You don't have them calling it what it is. You don't have them saying, wait a minute, President Biden, you're here talking about democracy and the filibuster? Well, how about some democracy and honor your commitments to the people who elected you? How about some democracy? Actually listen to 70% of Americans who want Medicare for all. How about Listen? I think it's way past 70, who want a $15 minimum wage. You can't talk about democracy if your actions go against democracy. With that, let me read some super chats. Keep it coming. I will have a public service announcement at the end of this, so don't go anywhere. Aaron, $4.99. Keep up the good work. Love Sawant. I am very fond, a big fan of Kshama Sawant. I try not to bow down to politicians, but I do like Kshama Sawant. Leslie Wheeler, $5. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Jaybird D, $10. Appreciate it. Mr. Methuselah, $10. Love Kshama. Love Status Coup. Tony DeMaio, $2.99. Thank you. Fist bump. Lisa P925, $9.99. Thank you. Thank you. Tiny Jungle, $5. She is a legend. Donald Parrish, $4.99. Thanks for your energy. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Keep them coming. Oh, that's just one bucket. Leslie Wheeler, $5. The hubby and I purchased a hoodie and t-shirt. Holy cow. I love my hoodie. We'll be sending you a picture of us wearing the Coup gear soon. We love you guys. Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. By the way, just so you know, we are currently in the background working on a new logo for Status Coup and a new website. So as once we get the new logo, we might be selling new hoodies with the new logo. But don't throw away your existing hoodie. You could have the before and after, because we are working on a new logo just to freshen things up a bit, since we've been doing this for 3 years now. Thank you for getting the hoodie. I can't wait to see the picture. Send us the pictures. info@statuscoup.com. That's info@statuscoup.com. Gabe, yo, $3. Fist bump. Appreciate it. Phil C, $5. If you think Jimmy's super chat is impressive, then you should check out Tim Pool's chat. Okay. I didn't say anything about either super chat, but I will. I have never watched Tim Pool, so I can't comment. Marcel David, $5. Thanks, Jordan, for bringing back the outstanding Sawant. Appreciate her coming on. LA, $5. Keep up the great work, Jordan. Thank you. Thank you. Kevin Howard, $10. Jordan, great interview. Your reporting is invaluable. Why? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Adam Ross, $3.99. Why is saying the squad sold out bad? They did. So I want to really get this home, because I see comments and this, that, the other thing. So to me, and this is just me, and again, like, I'm friends with Jimmy. I like Jimmy. I like others that say this stuff all the time. So to me, I'm not really like, it's not really a response to how they talk. This is just how I view things. I think that, and this kind of started after 2016 when Bernie dropped out and supported Hillary. I think a lot of people who are progressive and on the left are honestly, genuinely, understandably angry. I think they're understandably angry because they are being basically gaslit. They are being exploited. They are being hoodwinked, and they are being left behind and screwed. And when I say they, I mean you. So I'm not like a stand for AOC or Rashida Tlaib or any. I saw somebody being like, Jordan wants that access. What access? I've never interviewed any of these people, and I don't really give a shit. I don't need to interview them. If access is what I wanted, trust me, I wouldn't do half of the things I do. But to me, I think so many people are so fixated on just this like zero-sum game and black or white thinking of you're a sellout or you're a fraud or you're this or that. And almost like it's a litmus test now. It's a litmus test in progressive media that I'm not going to support you financially or with my viewership if you don't agree with me 1,000%, or if you don't talk the way I talk 1,000%, or if you don't just say what I think 1,000%. And to me, that is a very, very dangerous place to be, whether it's progressive media or any media. If you really need your views 1,000% validated at all times, if you require the people that you watch to basically to agree with you 1,000%, or to say the things that the way you feel them, then you should watch Fox News probably, because there's an entire right-wing propaganda sphere out there that exists literally for that purpose. But I actually think AOC is significantly failing the people right now. Same thing with the rest of the squad. Ro Khanna, all these people. Not because I think they're bad people, but frankly, I think they're wimps. I think they're Wimps. Yeah, I said it. I think they are wimps. I think they've been in Washington too long. I don't think they're corrupt, but I think they are genuinely hesitant to go that extra step and be scorched earth. And so I think that's the problem. I also think, frankly, some of these people, not because they're bad people, but because I just think it is what it is, are a little more focused on reactions on Twitter and their Twitter following and their Instagram following, and they don't want to piss off their followers. But the point is, I don't think in terms of this person's a sellout and these people are frauds and this and that. That's just not how I think. Maybe it's because I've been around the country and I've seen significantly more than most of you, and I've seen the misery. But I don't, if the goal is to win, I don't personally think you're going to win by demonizing people. And when I say demonizing, there's a difference between shaming people and demonizing them. I'm all for shaming. If I had the power, I would start the hashtag right now, AOC, where's the ruckus? I would do it in a second. I would start the hashtag AOC, enough tweets. I'm all for shaming. I'm all for, frankly, threatening to primary these people if they're not going to fight. But to me, I don't think it's actually an effective way to get them to do what you want by calling them sellouts, by calling them frauds. And the devil's advocate can say, well, Jordan, too bad. You just call it what it is. You should do that. Okay, you could think that, but I don't think it's effective. So it's not about access for me because I don't have any access to these people. I mean, Jank, my old boss, basically admitted in a ridiculous video, burning my bridges, he said. He openly admitted, yeah, I'm going to burn all my relationships. He was basically saying, well, here's why I didn't fight for force to vote, because I didn't want to piss off these people that I desperately want access to. Well, I don't need access to them, and I don't get access to them. And if I had the opportunity to interview AOC, but it meant never criticizing her, I just wouldn't interview her because I don't give a shit. But the point is, if you think that it's just going to be a magic thing, like the gates are going to open if we call them sellouts and we call them frauds, I just disagree with you. And if you don't want to watch me because I won't say what you want, then, you don't have to watch me, but I'm not here to play for clicks. And I certainly am not here to try and scratch people's righteous indignation. I'm not 14. I'm not 15. I'm not 16 years old. And if your mentality is, you have to call them frauds, you have to call them sellouts. No, they believe a lot of the things we believe. They're just currently not willing to fight for it. So I will shame them and I will call to shame them. I agreed with Jimmy's force to vote 100%. I said it at the time. I was all for it. I agree with shaming them now for not fighting or not willing to block these bills. But again, I don't see why calling them Lucifer and calling them sellouts and calling them frauds and, all this stuff. Explain it to me. How is that going to get us what we want? Honestly. So I think there is kind of this nuanced view. You might not like it, and you don't have to watch me if I'm not fire breathing enough for you. However, respectfully, do you see any other outlets reporting on Flint, Michigan 7 years later? You see any other outlets actually covering anything in the field other than giving hot takes in the comfy confines of their studios? Do you see any other outlets out there covering Amazon's unionization fight on the ground? You see any other outlets out there covering 1 year later protests for no justice for Breonna Taylor? You see any outlets ever leaving their studio and providing anything more than hot takes? Trust me, I'd have a lot less grays. I'd probably be making more money and be a lot more rested if I just did hot takes, if I just came to you from a studio and that's all I did. But Status Coup has always been about more than that. So whatever, you call people you call people whatever you want. I don't really give a shit. To me, you're not getting what you want simply by calling people frauds and sellouts and talking like you're fucking 16. But do as you please. Okay, so with that said, I want to tell you that we are currently thinking about joining the cool kids and creating a status quo Substack. And, you know, for those of you that know David Sirota, I think his newsletter is through Substack, and Matt Taibbi, who I really like, has a Substack, and a lot of people are doing Substacks. And I've thought to myself, because there's so much shit, there's so much stuff going on behind the scenes that you guys have absolutely no idea about. And a lot of that stuff basically is our 24/7 battle royale with the corporate media. Our 24/7, my, Jen, Status Quo's 24/7 war to get the truth published in corporate outlets. And the only reason that we even bother trying to get our stories published in corporate outlets is simply because they're larger than us right now. For certain investigative stories, there are risks we're taking. So we want legal protections. But I was saying to Jessica, who is helping us on the marketing end, she was on our members call last week, that honestly, just the behind the scenes of the shit we have had to deal with Vice, Newsweek, The Intercept, The Daily Beast, The New York Times, The Washington Post. I mean, I could go through a very, very long list of outlets that we've had to deal with. The insane responses that we get. Outlets simply telling us, yeah, we're going to pass, when we hand them evidence of a massive government cover-up. And by the way, a lot of this is on Flint, but we're also talking about other things. And you guys don't know anything about it, because I guess I never figured out a way that made sense to, how do I tell this story? How do I tell the behind the scenes of an actual independent outlet, an actual independent investigative outlet that's going up against corrupt corporate media? So right now in the background, we are currently trying to come up with a Substack. I'm doing too much as it is, so I don't know if we would have a new post every single day. But more written content. A lot of it would be behind the scenes, so you know what we're currently dealing with. Like right now, literally for the last month, I've been dealing with shit you would not believe in trying to get a massive story out on Flint. I like to underpromise and overdeliver, but once you read this story, I think you're going to be so shocked how much of an effort that you're going to be shocked that the hardest part was not actually landing this information, which is truly corrupt. It was actually getting it printed in the media. If you guys only knew the battle that we have to fight just to get the truth out of these stories, the truth of these stories out, just the battle we have to wage just to get national media outlets to give a shit about these important stories. I don't understand it, and I'm the one dealing with it. So we are working on that. I'm hoping that we're going to have or do kind of what they call a soft launch soon of our Substack. And another thing is we need to come up with different revenue sources, because frankly, this platform that we're on right now, I'm running out of patience. I got to be honest with you. I'm running out of patience. I'm 34 years old. I've been working probably 6 to 7 days a week for the last 3 years to grow Status Coup with Jen, who some of you asked. She's having a family situation right now. It's not, it's not for me to discuss somebody's personal situation, but she's having a family situation right now. So I'll just leave it at that. I don't think it's my place to discuss her personal matters, but we need to come up with different revenue sources, because honestly, right now, I mean, listen, the reality is we have more overhead. We have a lot more overhead than most outlets in our sandbox, most outlets in progressive media. We got me, we got Jen, we got Colin, John, our freelance cameraman, who obviously we're happy to pay, but have to pay. He's been doing a lot of work. We pay him per thing he covers. Now we have some help on the marketing end. Jessica, who's been doing some help, doing some marketing stuff for us. Eva has been helping us, kind of cutting clips, editing, stuff like that. So we have some mouths to feed. We also have, right now we haven't been traveling as much, but we do plan on getting back out there like we used to when it's safe. And that costs a lot of money. And right now we're struggling. I mean, I'm just going to keep it real. We're struggling because YouTube, it's almost like they're a human. When I say, I'm being sarcastic, by the way, because there's clearly human beings, but at YouTube, every single time that I publicly criticize YouTube on Twitter, our views start going down the drain. Our subscriber growth stops. In fact, right now, we are losing subscribers. We've been losing YouTube subscribers for 3 weeks. Every day I look, we're losing. We've lost 20, we've lost 30, we've lost 40 for no reason. All of a sudden, we're losing 20, 30, 50 YouTube subscribers every day. I don't think it's because people suddenly stop liking us. YouTube is literally unsubscribing people from our channel. Go check if you're still subscribed. If I show, I'll show you right now. Why bother hiding it? I'll show you right now. Look at this. Hold on. Do you see that? Do you see this chart? 28 we lost for some reason. 16, 5, 7, 10, 14, 23, 7, 24. No rhyme or reason whatsoever. By the way, we grew 7,000 subscribers. 7,000 subscribers in January. All of a sudden in February, we lost 200 in total. And every day we're losing. Now, part of that possibly could be I just haven't been able to go live as much as I normally do because, I'm only human and I've been working on this major investigative story, and it's extremely hard when you're working 15 hours a day on an investigative story to also go live and also do interviews. So part of it is I just haven't been able to go live as much as I do. But even outside of that, we're suddenly losing all these subscribers. John, our freelance cameraman, was live on Saturday from the Breonna Taylor anniversary march in New York City. It took over an hour. It took over an hour for us to get over 100 live viewers. We have 108,000 subscribers. It took over an hour on the 1-year anniversary of Breonna Taylor's murder, when it was in the news that it was the anniversary. It took over an hour. Even after we send out a text message. So something is extremely wrong here. And, a lot of people are talking about censorship, who should be removed, who should not. Well, there's a soft censorship that's been going on basically for 3 years on this platform. And it's the rigging of the algorithm on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter. Hell, we'll probably be further suppressed for me just saying this right now, because I believe YouTube has human beings that watch specific channels, and they just keep pulling that lever a little tighter whenever you go against them. So we need other revenue sources because, frankly, I'm not trying to startle you. I don't think Status Coup could survive the way things are going with YouTube. I don't think we could survive in the form that you want us to be, in the form that I want us to be, and that is out there in the field, traveling the country, getting in the trenches, covering stories no one is. That just costs a lot of money. People still complain, Jordan, stop asking for money. Well, when you want to make your money tree in your backyard available to us to cover all these things, the traveling, the equipment, the marketing, the social media, It costs us $700 to $1,000 per month, just the data plan and the server for our live view. If you want to provide us with that funding, God bless you. So that's the deal. We are currently working on launching this Substack. Not sure when it's going to be, probably in the next few weeks, but we're doing that. It would be like others where there's a certain amount of free content, and then there's other content that would be for paid subscribers. It would be separate than our Status Coup membership. So obviously Status Coup members get, certain perks, like our monthly members call, access to our Discord and all that, and obviously just supporting us. So this would be separate from that. We're kind of going over everything right now, how much it would be, those kind of things. There would be content that is free. So obviously, if you can't support us financially on that, you would be able to get some content for free. But we're working on it. We're working on it. So I really, really appreciate it. Jordan, have you tried to get in touch with Joe Rogan? Oh, Taylor, do you know how many times I've tried to get in touch with Joe Rogan? I feel half of my last 5 years has been trying to get in touch with either Michael Moore or Joe Rogan. Yes, we've tried to get in touch with Joe Rogan, and we have unfortunately not. We have not. Frankly, I've even asked some folks in the progressive sphere, that have been on with Joe Rogan. Hey, you mind, tapping him on the shoulder, being like, hey, you should check them out. Because I'll tell you, going on Joe Rogan would be a game changer. Going on Joe Rogan would be an absolute game changer. So, we've tried to get on Joe Rogan, tried a lot of things. And honestly, just from I don't want to do like a woe is me and pity us kind of thing, but it does get frustrating. It really gets frustrating when you just work and days. I mean, you guys don't even, you have no idea the amount of hours I put into this, because all you really see visibly is the live stream. I mean, the live stream honestly is probably like 7 to 10% of what I do. Most of what I do is behind the scenes that you don't even see. And that's the investigative reporting. But it's frustrating when you're working this hard, yet Silicon Valley is just basically fucking you and stealing from you and hiding you. I mean, the First Amendment, you could say whatever you want to say. YouTube's private, blah, blah, blah. But people should sink or swim on their content, on the merits of the content, on the merits of the reporting, on the merits of the commentating, on the merits of the storytelling, whatever. You should succeed or fail based on, do you got the goods or don't you have the goods? You should succeed, or, if you're a reporter, you should succeed or fail based on what type of stories do you cover? Are you somebody, through your presentation that people gravitate to, that people want to watch, that people want to support, that people believe in? On the commentary end, are you somebody that people find entertaining or informative or riveting or whatever? You should be able to succeed or not based on that. And unfortunately, the way that YouTube and Google and Facebook and Twitter and a lot of these channels that are throttling the hell out of us, not just us, but other progressive channels, it's completely, I mean, you just said it, Carne Verde, they've just stacked the deck. They've just stacked the deck against us, where I was trying to tell Jessica, who's helping us on marketing, honestly, it doesn't really, Jesus could bless the thumbnails we put up. Thumbnails are the images for the videos. Jesus could bless them. We could have the best headlines known to man. We could do everything right. But at the end of the day, if YouTube has basically put these channels on the what is Santa on the good list, and these channels on the naughty list, it really doesn't matter what you do. If you're on the naughty list, you're on the naughty list. So I really hope in the future somebody figures out a really, really good alternative to YouTube, that we could get similar audiences that we have now, grow our audiences, but most importantly, actually be able to eat and earn revenue and all that. Because it's frustrating. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm very frustrated. So, I love Jimmy. I love Kyle. I love all these channels, but we didn't really have the benefit of existing for many, many years before YouTube changed their algorithm. Kyle's been doing this, I think, for over 10 years, but he grew mostly before YouTube started strangling channels. Jimmy, had the benefit of growing for many years before YouTube changed its algorithm to just start fucking with channels. It doesn't mean that they haven't experienced issues with it, but they already had a huge built-in audience because they were allowed to, they were able to grow without the interference from YouTube, without YouTube basically picking winners and losers. We actually started directly after they started throttling channels and they changed the algorithm and adpocalypse and all that. So, and I remember, honestly, I might do a report on this one day. I truly remember we started the channel in February 2018 and we were growing pretty quick, like organically. I think we grew like 6,000 or 7,000 subscribers in like 3 weeks, which is pretty damn good. And all of a sudden I did a video criticizing YouTube. Boo! Boo! Fell off a cliff. Our views fell off a cliff. Our subscriber growth fell off a cliff. And essentially since that point, aside from a few videos or live streams that really were like home runs, I remember I was the first Democratic Party debate in Miami. A couple live streams were huge. Couple videos after the fact, shorter videos took off. Aside from that, we've basically had to hit home runs just to grow. And if we didn't hit home runs, we were just flat. And that's not how you I had the benefit of being a TYT before YouTube changed its algorithm and started with all this corporate censorship and suppression. That's not how it usually works on YouTube. If you have a good channel and you're growing, it's usually steady growth. And even if you don't hit home runs for specific live streams or specific videos, you're still growing because people are seeing you and you're being recommended based on the normal healthy algorithm. But when they changed it, it just, and I'm preaching, I know for a fact a lot of other channels have experienced this. I know Graham Elwood has experienced this. I've talked to him about it. Jamal Thomas, many others. But with YouTube, there's none of that steady growth. It's either exploding periods or flat or losing. And that's not normal. And I really hope, we got a lot of battles to fight, but I really hope progressives, even ones with much bigger followings, Jimmy, Kyle, all these people, even Crystal, I really hope we all come together at some point, because it might not be affecting certain channels as much as other channels, but at some point it will affect those larger channels. Don't think they're not going to come after Jimmy at some point and try to shut him down. I would say the same thing about Kyle and others. That slippery slope is getting slipperier, if that makes sense. And yes, somebody mentioned Twitch. We actually, if you don't know, we are live right now every day, all the time. We're live on YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch at the same time. However, I do think we're going to try to do some Twitch only stuff and see how that goes. Because I know that Twitch, there's a lot of channels that are starting to do just exclusive for Twitch stuff. So we haven't really done that. We might try that. Wow. I want to got a couple big super chats that just came in. Really, really appreciate it. By the way, just so you know, obviously whatever people could do is appreciated. If it's not within your means, we totally get it. But we do still have our GoFundMe. We are at $139,000. That's $139,000 raised. To be clear, because a lot of people might be new, we do not have 139,000. I wish. That's what we have cumulatively raised over since we launched this September 2018. So about 2.5, 3 years. But our goal is 200,000. So we're definitely, still working to hit that goal. If we raised another 60,000, it would definitely help the things I'm talking about right now. But you could definitely, if it's within your means, if it's not, we totally get it. You could also support us in the GoFundMe. The link is in the description. I think people said the other day that the link wasn't working. It should be working now because I fixed it. Let me put that in the super chat too, the GoFundMe link. GoFundMe, whatever you want to do, super chat, GoFundMe. GoFundMe takes less than YouTube does, of course, because YouTube's a bunch of criminals. So if you want us to get the most money, drop in GoFundMe. I just put the link. So let me read a couple super chats that just came in. Thank you for all your support, folks. Really, really appreciate it. Progressive Geek, $10 with the thumbs up sticker. Thank you. Chris Garrett, $10. Corporate media is losing viewers and they're waging war on independent journalism. We need independent voices instead of a steady diet of political marketing and propaganda. Support status quo. That from the original OG, Chris Garrett. Huge, loyal supporter. Thanks, Chris. Couldn't agree more. I mean, if you guys, what you guys see as suppression, if you only knew the half of what we're dealing with behind the scenes, which is part of the purpose of the Substack. And I'm going to be dropping some pretty detailed behind the scenes. What do they call it? Dropping the veil once we get the Substack going. Thank you, Chris. Neil, £4.99, I think that is. Enjoyed show, listening from the UK. Keep fighting, everyone. Don't just listen. Do something. Campaign. Put pressure on politicians. Make a difference. Thank you. Kevin Howard, $5. Jordan, I will subscribe to your Substack too. Independent media with actual reporting is worth my bottom dollar. Please interview Peter Joseph. Thank you. I don't know who Peter Joseph is, so you could email me who that is, and I'll take a look. info@statuscoup.com. Feel free to email me about him. Noah, $2. Jordan, do you have any spiritual beliefs? Do I have any spiritual beliefs? That's a good question. My dad is a super Jew. So is my older brother. I'm not. I'm proud to be Jewish, but I'm not a practicing Jew. I just go to dinners for holidays with my family. Spiritually, I think I used to be a little bit more spiritual, but honestly, I've seen way too much shit, and I guess it's made me more cynical. So I can't really say that I'm that spiritual of a person, because honestly, I just see too much corruption and misery and injustice in the country. But what I am, I don't know if this is spiritual, but what I am is I am a big believer in oppressed and downtrodden people fighting back and coming together, because I have seen that. So I do believe, in terms of spirituality, in all of us coming together, especially those that are being screwed. So that I do believe in. I don't know if that answers your question, but thanks for the super chat. Gino, $99.99. Holy cow, Gino. So helpful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Indirect federal government contribution via my COVID cookie check. I support status quo, not the status quo. I believe in you, Jordan. What you do matters. Keep on keeping on. Gino, I ain't going to lie. Sometimes those messages mean a lot more than you would know. The money is amazing too. Thank you for the $100. But sometimes, I don't want to make us out to be martyrs or special, but sometimes this work can get thankless, and you kind of, sometimes you need a reminder that people really depend on it and appreciate it. So thank you. Thank you for that, Gino. I appreciate it. Seth Peterson, $20. Keep up the fight, Jordan. Appreciate all you do. I appreciate you, Seth. You've been so supportive over the years. Thank you. Thomas Horder, $1.49. Thank you, Thomas. Very much. Blah, 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 blah. All right, folks. I don't know if I'll be live tomorrow. I'm going to try, but I am working on something behind the scenes. If I'm not, I'll talk to her, but Tina might be live. So stay tuned for that. We'll definitely cut up today's interview with Council Member Sawant. So we will definitely air those tomorrow. I don't know if you'll see them because YouTube hides stuff, but definitely, look back to the channel. By the way, oh shit, I can't even tell you because I don't know what it is anymore. I don't know what our text is anymore. I have to ask Jen, and she's not here. So I will tell you the next time. If you're not on our text list, join our text list, but I don't know the number at the moment. So I have to get back to you on that. And I will be returning to my normal, not wearing a blazer or button down, my next live stream. I did it because I like Kshama Sawant. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I will see you, if not tomorrow, likely Friday. Keep it going. Super chats are welcome. GoFundMe is particularly welcome. Most importantly, if you say, Jordan, I can only do one thing. Sign up as a Status Coup member. Sign up as a Status Coup member. That is statuscoup.com/join. Statuscoup.com/join. That is how we grow. Statuscoup.com/join. We are at 1,745. 1,745. Before the pandemic, we were almost at 2,000. So we've lost, a bit of members, understandably. But help us get back. Statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for just $5 a month. Just $5 a month. Thanks for watching. Peace.